Hamel Time. All right. So this is Daryl Hamel again with Stop Hamel Time, and this is the first official episode. And on this episode, I have a good friend, somebody I've worked in the car biz with, and actually helped me purchase a new house, somebody I've known for quite some time, Derrick Silvers. Go ahead, Derrick, say hi.
Hello there, Daryl Hamel.
What's going on, my man?
Hamel Time.
It is. Stop. Hamel Time. So I just want to say it's really good to have you in the studio. But,
nice to be here.
But I am going to say it's nice to have you in the studio again.
Correct.
Because this is our second time recording this,
That's
actually.
Right.
So the first time I did it, it was very interesting. Everything came out good. I thought the dialogue was great. The way we communicated, the video looked good, all except for the damn focus box around your face. And it would just pop in for focusing on your face. And I'm like, damn it.
Yep.
Face detection.
Technology is wonderful when it works.
So, I mean, it worked. It just...
Well, we won't say user error. It just something happened.
Actually, it's user error. I fucked up.
That's basically what happened.
Basically.
But it's good to be here again. The good news is that, my wife always says two things you don't want to do is put a camera or a microphone in front of me. I thought we talked for 10 minutes. I couldn't believe it was an hour and a half.
Well, you know, when I'm going to say, before we even get into this, it was interesting. So I'd asked you for some feedback on the pilot.
Yep.
You know, and you gave me some really good feedback, you know, for one. Behind you, if we look now, we have the gray curtain. We were hanging the ceiling track at the time. Actually, my buddy Brent, who was in the pilot. Yep. And so, you know, I had to do weird camera angles, and you're like, you know, you could do different camera angles. I'm like, check, gotcha, my man.
Yep.
And the second one was, I remember you had said time. You're like, you know, it kind of went on for a while.
Sure.
And so I was like, no, I can see that. And then we got done yesterday, and you're like, damn, that was like 10 minutes. And I'm like, no, that shit was like an hour and a half. And you're like, oh my God, time just goes. And I'm like,
amazing.
Fun, isn't it? And you're like, I can't wait to be back.
That's it. Well, it's amazing. You know, when you talk about yourself, you could do it for days, right?
You weren't talking about yourself at all yesterday,
no,
were you?
Not at all. No.
We talk about other people on this show.
Yeah,
bullshit. So anyways, you know, what I would like to do is let's get back to like how we met, how we know each other.
Sure thing.
And I think it was very interesting because we had actually met in the car business.
Yep. Someplace
that I never thought I'd find myself.
Interesting. And
someplace now, have people in your family sold cars?
My dad for over 30 years was in the car business.
Over 30 years.
Yeah. I think from the time he was probably in his, late teens to early 20s, he started in the car business. So it was probably longer than that.
Let me ask you this. So when you were a kid, I mean, did you grow up with a father in the car business?
Yeah.
Now,
from the time that I remember, he was in the car business until he transitioned into real estate.
Was the car business, was it then like it is today? Because when I started, I didn't realize it was like a Monday through Sunday job sometimes, open to close.
Well, my dad was in management, and so never saw him. Never saw him. Yeah, I mean, sometimes on the weekend, he would leave early in the morning and be there till after 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I think that's the life of a sales manager.
I think that's some things that people don't quite understand.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you go to the dealership, you always want to see your salesman, whether you're about to buy the car and especially after you buy the car.
Yep.
And you don't realize in order for you to run into your salesman, he never knows when she never knows when you're going to come in, which means you have to fucking be there open to close.
That's it.
But you're human. You know,
right.
We need time off.
And I don't know if you experienced this, but I experienced being sucked in. Now, I loved sales, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the excitement of the car business. And I, if you're in a good dealership, I think that it's a great place to be. But I didn't know when to cut it off. If I was there till 3 o'clock that day, I could have gone home and had a life. But instead, I usually chose, okay, I didn't sell a car. I should stay here. Or I sold a car. Maybe I could get two.
Right.
And then maybe I'll take off tomorrow morning. No, you won't, depending on the person you are. And unfortunately, if you aren't that type of a person, unless you have a really good setup, you're probably not going to make the money you want to make in the car business.
Yeah, the car business. Boy, that's, what I love about the car business is this. So first you have the stereotype of the car business. Mm-hmm. Then you have the people, and even as a salesperson, you have the people and they get like slightly educated. Now they know all about the fucking car business.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And even as a salesman, like your first year, you're like, I know about the car business.
Yeah.
Then you're like a year and 3 months in it, and you're like, do I really know anything about the car business?
Well, I think that can be with any business with the ever-changing world that we live in. And then, I always say pride comes before the fall because, especially in real estate now, I'll call people out on contract stuff and the next day I find myself making a mistake on something simple, which we all make mistakes, but, it's just situational. Every deal is different. When they tell you that, it's the truth.
No
and
doubt.
I don't know if this was your experience, but they always told me, and I didn't believe it until it happened to me. My first sales manager said, stay dumb like a fox. Don't know what the interest rates are.
Are foxes dumb?
No, they're very smart,
Okay.
Sly.
Yeah,
So dumb like a fox.
Oh, dumb like a fox, right?
Yeah. So basically, don't know everything. And he was right, because the thing is, when the people came in and they said to me, I started getting the question, well, what's the interest rate? I don't know what the interest rate is. I don't know your credit. I don't know your background. I know nothing about you. I don't know what specials there are. That's for the finance manager. And the thing is that clients or customers would get almost upset if because they want payment. Well, how much is it going to be per month?
Right.
I got no clue. And you really don't. But the thing that happened to me was I said I didn't know, and I just told them what I did know, which I sold the car.
Right.
Which you spoke of. And so, we would go out on the test ride. They get to like me, or get to like the salesperson, and then they feel comfortable, and then we work a car deal. But once I started knowing some of the interest rates, knowing some of the deals, this was a month later, my sales started going down the tubes.
Because you start to know too much and think about other things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I had to revert back and say, you know what, I don't know about that, but I'm going to find that answer for you. And that had to be a viable answer. And the way that they took that was the way they took it, whether they could think that I was, lying, which a lot of people do when you're in the car business.
Oh,
but
yeah. From both sides.
From both sides, yeah. But it was the truth, and I did not know because I didn't know, have enough information to tell them. But when they, I think it was like after my first month, somebody said, well, what's the interest rate? And I'm like running into to the finance guy. Hey, what's the interest rate? And it's like, they haven't even looked at a car yet.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's like, how am I going to quote
Be
this
like,
stuff?
are you shopping interest rates? Because if you are, you should probably be at the banks.
Yeah,
You're at the wrong place. Like, we have one person who does that.
Right.
Yeah.
So dumb like a fox, he told me to be. And once I started to not be dumb like a fox, my sales went down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
I always find it very interesting how so I've met a lot of people in the car business, but not many I've kept in touch with. And so, that was something I thought about, after we, because we did the show yesterday, and like I said, we had to redo it. And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, there's really not many people I stay in touch with after the car business. And for some reason, I stayed in touch with you, but the way that you and I met is actually very interesting.
Yeah.
Because we were actually almost competing for a sale, not even knowing who the fuck each other was.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm at Nissan, you're at Kia. I think Kia had started an internet division, which I think we already said that basically you weren't even looking for.
So we had the internet division, but what's interesting about Kia is we also had Mitsubishi as well.
Right.
Basically, two stores that nobody in Crown, and I'll be completely upfront, that they didn't fucking care about.
Right.
Right? They're like, oh, you're going to die?
The old
go to
buildings.
Kia.
And,
go to Mitsubishi.
Yeah. And you had your buddy Bob Shaw.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love Bob.
He was a great guy.
Bob's
great
one
guy.
of the most awesome people. But
Amazing.
we had all those used cars,
Yep.
I want to say, through Mitsubishi.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Because you had to take them over across the lot, or from Kia. There was the little
Yeah, because
road.
we'd be in like the new car store,
Yeah.
right? And we're like, oh, we're with Kia, and the guys over at Mitsu would be like, Meanwhile, everybody else in the organization's like, oh, you're over at Kia.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because those guys can sell used cars, so they're doing better than you.
Yeah.
But so I'm at Nissan, first time in the business, and I don't know how long I had actually been there or how experienced I was, but I was one of those guys that it was tough for me a lot of times to put on the salesmanship, especially when I figured out that most of the time that when I would tell them all the features that maybe they didn't care about any of the ones that I mentioned. So you'd get this script down. But what was interesting about that is that, so I think I had gotten a phone call because the BMW was at Nissan, but it gets advertised on all the different sites.
No, I think the BMW was actually at our dealership.
Okay.
Right? Because I remember.
Did you drive it over?
No, because we met. Did we meet
It was
over
at
Nissan?
the Nissan. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I think the car was there and the people showed up at Kia.
Oh, that's what it was. They showed up at our dealership. I'm running them through all
Correct.
the cars.
Yes.
Oh, my God. Now I remember. I'm running them through all the cars. And he goes, well, what about this BMW?
Yep.
He goes, we talked about it. I'm like, no, we didn't. I'm like, BMW. And I started to put shit together. And I'm like, oh, that's over at Nissan. Let's roll. And then I remember I went and asked for it. And they're like, oh, I think somebody here's
I probably was
working
holding
with
on
that.
the keys. I had the keys in my hand, I'm sure, holding on to those
So they had
puppies.
called you that night or whatever and wanted to come in and see it?
They had called,
Oh,
but they
that's
probably
funny.
called and they thought they were probably talking to Daryl.
Right.
Derrick and Daryl.
So and they probably showed up at the Mitsu store thinking it was the same place because, Crown has so many different dealerships.
It can be confusing.
And it's right across the street
Understandable.
almost.
Yeah. So you get a hold of them. I think you called over and you and I spoke. And I said, what do you want to do? And you're like, well, I'll just bring them over.
Yeah.
Just being the positive guy you are, let's just work it out.
Yeah.
And then we both got there. I remember it was late because the lights were on.
Yeah.
And we had pulled the car up and opened the door, and it was this gentleman and the wife sits down in the car. And I remember you and I just awkwardly standing there.
Like, what the fuck did we do?
Yeah, a couple seconds go by, and then you go, oh, by the way, look at this on the side. And you started to do the pump up of the seat. I was like, all right, good. This guy.
She's like this. She's like, whoo.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, good. Daryl's going to close the deal. We get half, so let me know what I can do.
Yeah, fuck it, man. It's like you said, the lights are on. I can't even remember if I had sold a car that day. And I was like, one way or another, fucking car is getting sold tonight.
Somebody's taking something home.
Getting something.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
So that's how we met.
Yep.
And then, so you weren't in the internet department at first.
No. I don't remember Nissan even having one at that point. I think they were just really like making it separate or something.
Yeah.
I think it maybe even went into the managers and somebody said, hey, call this person or.
Well, Nissan was always a little different because wasn't so the
Terry
Crown
Hawkins.
organization is owned by the Hawkins.
Right.
And it was one, so it was like two or three brothers.
Right.
And I know one brother was like Mid-Atlantic. Mm-hmm. Then one brother worked at Nissan, like that was like his thing.
Yeah.
So I remember like they would always implement things from the top down because they do have a CEO, Jim Myers. They do.
Yep.
They do have a vice president of marketing. I think now is the executive director, Joe Lamphere.
Yep.
And then Terry Hawkins, right, at Nissan was like, well, that's great, but we're not doing that here.
Yeah.
And everybody's just like, okay, there. So he would do whatever so everybody else had an internet department. He's like, I ain't getting that shit here.
So small world, my father-in-law worked with Terry Hawkins in the 60s.
In the 60s?
No, not in the 60s. Sorry. When did Bianca move down? It had to be in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
So Bianca, born in 74, maybe late 80s, early 90s.
Okay. So your father-in-law worked with a future owner or employer.
Let me do this for a second. 74, 84. Yeah, it would have been, it would have run the 90s.
Do you want me to get a calculator?
Yeah, no.
Here, you can count with your fingers. I mean, that's okay. That's why we're given 10. You can do multiples.
Thank you. I'll use my toes. But yeah, so anyway, it was interesting because he actually, when he had moved Bianca and her mom down here, he got a job with the Crown organization working with Terry Hawkins.
No shit.
Yeah,
man.
that's a story for another day. That's kind of funny.
God.
I mean, they've been in business a long time, which has been great.
Now, how long were you in the car business for?
On and off for about 4 years.
Total?
Yeah.
When did you start the car biz?
So I think 2009, 2010, somewhere around there.
Okay. So I started in 2010. So
Okay.
I came down to Florida at the ass end of 2009.
Okay.
And I want to say I met and interviewed with Joe Lamphere
Okay.
for a marketing position
Yep.
in the summer of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at me. He said, wow, you're a smart guy. You're really good. I think you're going to be a great fit. You're not going to do marketing. You're going to do internet sales. And I'm like, car salesman? No.
Not me.
But I ended up doing it. And so I remember he's like, car salesman. And I'm like, I'm not.
You were good at it.
I would just, at that time, I just wanted a job.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right. I was like, great. Where? Honda, Jaguar. He's like, Kia. I'm like, fucking Kia? I'm like, cop cars? Like
Cop cars?
The Optima looked like a cop car, back then. I was like, what the fuck? Like a 1980s
like
cop car.
Yeah.
I'm like, how am I going to sell that shit?
Right.
He goes, oh, they're really changing, So that's how I got started.
Yep.
So you started in 2009.
Yep.
Okay. And then you went into the internet.
Yep.
And that's how you and I really.
Yeah.
That's
so Nissan, I wanted to get out. I think I quit. And then I had quit and got rehired so many times at Cheryl Shearer. Remember her?
Oh, yeah.
In the office. Yeah. When I left the last time.
HR, right?
She basically told me she would never do my paperwork again. That's how many times I had left and come back.
Wow.
Now, she liked me. She was half joking, I know, because she was like, seriously, I'm not doing your paperwork again. I think I left and came back about 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And so I went to Kia to try out the internet department, and that's where you and I sat exactly like this.
But I think was that your first internet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then we started meeting at the meetings upstairs.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because for people who aren't in the car business, you're always in the fucking meeting, aren't you?
That's it.
There's always meetings.
There's always a meeting.
Sales are down. Sell more. Are you following?
Sales are up. We're cutting your commission.
It's almost like, have you ever seen that? I know, right? We have a new payment plan for you guys, and they're all excited.
It's gonna be great.
And they're like, you're going to make about $10,000 less every year.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to get fucking excited about that? Well, if you sold more cars, you could actually make the same amount of money you made last year.
We talked about contracts, baby.
Oh, my God.
You had no choice. It was what it was. I mean,
some of those meetings, you ever see that? Was it Glengarry, Glenn Ross with Alec Baldwin?
Oh, yeah.
He's like, ABC always be closing.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes they were like that.
Oh, yeah. Being a Jay Biggerstaff meeting.
Like the leads are shit. Fuck you.
Yeah. Basically, every lead's a good lead, right? It's like, until it's not.
Put that coffee down. You're like, what the fuck?
Dude, I got a bad story. Maybe I won't tell it. I just thought of that that
we could probably
happened.
save that for off air if it's going to implicate somebody.
All right. It was you.
Oh, Jesus. Oh. Go for it. I'm all for it.
I guess you can edit it out.
Yeah. No, let's hear it.
I think it was on a Jeep. I for some reason I feel like it was on a Jeep, and when you got those Jeeps in on
like
trade,
the Wranglers. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, remember that? I mean,
it's like
people
fucking
would
gold.
go crazy over that.
It still is to this day.
It still is
to this day. Yeah, because they're like 50 fucking grand.
$50,000. Yeah. So I remember. I don't know why. I remember this being like 24 something, and it was a good price, and somebody was. I think this was a situation where you got mad at the guy, and anyway, it ended up where the guy was really, really uncool to you, and ended up not buying the vehicle. I think you held it for him, and you had another customer going to buy. I mean, it was really rotten.
Possibly.
It was rotten.
Yeah,
and so you thought you'd maybe help the guy out and shop for some other ones by submitting his information to other places in order for him to be contacted by.
I don't remember that. But you never know. You never know. Sometimes you tell them to pound sand. Sometimes you tell them to talk to a whole bunch of other fucking people.
Well, I'm pretty sure they talked to quite a few people after that was submitted to probably every dealership in Pinellas County.
There's not many, but there's always just that one or two assholes in your career where you're just like, that son of a bitch.
Yeah. I tell, people get funny when it comes to money. I mean, it really does. You've got it in one scale with the car business, but then the real estate business too. I mean, it's an amazing business, but I've seen people get funny when it comes to money. That's all I can say.
Well, you know what? I think that's a good segue. But because I do want to talk more about the real estate thing, because you and I kind of diverge paths. But to go back to the cars really quick, The one thing I found very interesting, and I think if everybody sold cars, say for 6 months of their life, the training you get from that, the education you get from that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
There's nothing in a trade school, an academic school, a university, a master's class, a PhD. Like, you cannot be taught any of that shit that you learn selling that, because here's the beauty of it. Even though it was a Kia store, sometimes there'd be a fucking CEO in there, which I did sell a Kia to, and there'd be like just like the bottom of the barrel. You get all fucking walks of life. All walks of life, and it's amazing. It's amazing because I'll never forget it. The CEO, and they won't name the company, he was probably, I don't even know if I want to say frugal. There's a point where you get past frugality and you're just pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, do you want the dealership to pay for your car? Then they do the credit app and all that shit. And then you see who they are and you're like, are you shitting me?
Well, yeah. I mean,
you have that much money and
that's why they got so much money. And
I've
heard it all my life.
But I think that's what's very interesting about the car business, because it's everybody.
It is.
Right? It's applicable to everybody. So you're in the car business, right? I was in the car business. I went to fleet and commercial. I went to business. You eventually had gone off like a completely different route, and you had gone into real estate. And you had mentioned earlier that that's something that was it your dad, your parents were into?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the driving force? And wow, now that I think about it, it didn't even dawn on me before. Your father sold vehicles. You sold vehicles. Your father went to real estate. Now you're in real estate.
Right.
So was that kind of like the force, or what was it that pulled you to out of the auto business into real estate?
Yeah. Looking back, I'm glad we're talking about it again, because I would say boredom. I would always, I'm 40 years old. I've had 30 different jobs. If I really count it up, I've done 30 different things.
Okay.
And I always enjoyed
different
that.
things?
Yeah.
But like maybe in sales or retail, but it was like different places and different things.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is that when I would get to a plateau, if I couldn't go any further, I would just quit and leave.
Yeah.
And so I got to a plateau, and I didn't really want to do finance with the car business.
Oh, I did do finance.
It just wasn't for me. I felt
wasn't for me either.
That's a tough racket. I give it up for those guys. I hope that honesty prevails, but I think that's the one that it's not that.
That's fucking day in, day out grind.
It's a grind. It really is. That is the hardest sale that I ever saw someone trying to do, is sell them on different products.
If you think you're uncomfortable sitting across that desk and having that person present it, try being that person and having to do it day in, day out, every person that comes in.
Yeah.
After a while, you get immune, but at first, it's fucking grueling.
Sure. And they said that would be the natural progression if I ever wanted to be a manager.
Okay.
And I said, well, okay, then I'm done.
All say.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the natural progression.
Yeah, you have to go.
You want to run a dealership yourself?
To their defense, if you're going to structure a deal, you probably should know some back end.
It's absolutely correct.
Yeah, I mean, so they really should. So I kind of was. They had at Crown Honda, they had the internet department a little bit different. I don't know. They changed it a couple times, and I had it to where, man, I was just basically picking up the phone and answering emails and delivering.
Oh, I remember that. You actually had to have people help you. You had so much coming through.
I was selling so many cars that it was ridiculous, and they needed to change something, but I was on the good end of it, if that makes sense.
Hey-o.
And so that was kind of coming to an end, and I kind of knew that, and I was starting to get frustrated working 80 hours a week, and it was a grind. It was an absolute grind.
And plus, a lot of people, it's probably like their job. It's the same thing, day in, day out.
Right.
And
the boredom.
And I know you, so if I could really quick, the boredom came from you weren't learning or growing or changing in any way.
Right.
It's just the same shit every day, same scripts.
Yeah.
And at some point, you almost know every scenario that's going to come in.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you get that guy in the fucking bike that comes with a garbage bag of change, and you're like, what the But that's like once every 10 years, other than that, day in, day out, same shit.
Yeah. Which was tough for me. And my parents, they had kind of pushed it. Back in 2006, I did some advertising for them. So I was around the real estate business, and I picked up on a lot of things. I tried to do mortgages for a while. I just wasn't very passionate about it. And so I kind of put it to the side. And they kind of pushed it again and said, hey, listen, what about real estate? Why don't you at least, do the licensing? And so I thought, you know what, let me do it. I can do it, on my off time or while I'm at the dealership in between clients. I can do some schooling. And so I started doing the online course and end up, passing the test. And at that time, I went to a smaller dealership where I could have some flexibility.
Yeah, you're at West Coast Auto over there off 19, right?
Yep. Yeah. And also they were off on Sundays. So, people always told me, my parents really, they said, do the job you're in and do real estate on the side until you can't afford not to do real estate full time.
Okay.
But the thing is, you need some support with that too, because the thing is, if I'm working Tuesday during the day and I need, they want to see a house Tuesday during the day because that's when they're off. I needed my mom. I needed my dad. I needed Bianca, my wife, who got into it at the same time. Yeah. And so that's what I was doing. And I was also doing eBay and some estate sales on the side. At that time, Bianca had gotten her license, and she was really kind of trying to, get a foot in there while I was still paying the bills. Right. And then she got a listing, and I did something that I'd done in the past whenever I wanted to make a change. Instead of being smart about it, I just quit my job that day. Right. And I said, let's capitalize on this listing. Yeah. Luckily, we did. We did an open house that weekend. We kind of knew that the house was a little overpriced, but we took it anyway. And a guy walked down during the open house and said, I want to list my property. And we're like, oh my gosh.
So you got another, what do you call them? Do you call them clients? Do you call them customers in the business? Do you call them prospects, leads?
Do you want to get really technical?
Well, I mean, just what do you guys?
People call them clients all the time, but you should call them customers because a client means you have a single agent relationship. There's different relationships in real estate. Okay. And technically, you could get in trouble because now you're implying a different code or standard that you have to, act, if that's a right word, or apply when it's a single agent, there's a transaction broker, and there's a no brokerage relationship. When you call them a client, you might be implying something that could get you in a lot of trouble.
Oh, okay.
That's your side real estate tip for the day.
So basically,
for realtors out there.
So you guys are listing a house.
Yep.
You just quit the dealership.
Yep.
Bianca's actually now, and just a really quick side note, you actually were going for real estate. She wasn't. Right. But then her dad and her.
Yeah. So dad moves down from New Jersey. Her dad moves down from New Jersey. And we put him in our condo. We have two, so it's just 8 steps away. It was a really good, situation where he was able to be close by. Yep. And, he was 79 years old. But the thing is, he knew I was having a little trouble studying for the test because I was working full time.
Right. And so, he's a go-getter, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah, big time. And so he said, we're sitting at dinner one night, and he says, well, we're going to help your husband get into the family business. And I'm going to get my real estate license. And he bangs the desk.
This is you, him, and Bianca?
Yeah.
Just you three?
Yeah. And he goes, and you're going to get your real estate license looking at Bianca.
So your wife, who has no inclination to go into the business, right. you're going for it.
Yep.
Her father looks at her and says, you know what? Gosh darn it. Like, we're going to help him, and you and me are going to do this.
That's
and
it.
She's probably like mid-fork, like, WTF?
She was. Yeah. Yeah, she said it. She goes, I'm in my late 30s, and my dad is still telling me what to do. And it was after that though. She kind of opened up to it. She's like, okay, well let's do the study and let's take the course. Let's do these things. And then her dad didn't just do that, but went to Bianca's stepdad, who they're friends, his ex-wife's husband, and ropes him into going to class as well.
Oh, wow.
So he gets everybody just on board to go and let's get our real estate license. Let's do this.
So now your wife and her dad they got their license or they got certified before you did, correct?
Right around the same time.
Right around the same
Yeah,
time?
yeah.
But you're still at the
thing is,
dealership.
I started a year before them.
A year before.
Yeah.
But you're still at the dealership. So
I am.
she gets a listing. You guys go, you're like, hey, let's go. Like I'm ready to go.
Yep.
You guys go to this. You're only listing, by the way.
Yep. Only
Right.
listing.
You're only listing.
Yep.
So you left the dealership.
Uh-huh.
She's going in on this. She was a barber beforehand, right?
Correct.
Right. So neither of you have any real experience in real estate.
Right.
She gets one listing.
Uh-huh.
You're like, hey, let's go all in.
Uh-huh.
Just talk about holy shit, taking a risk.
Well, yeah. I mean, and we had to call my mom to come over and do the listing paperwork.
Yeah.
I mean, we were so green we couldn't even fill out the listing paperwork.
Did you ever have anybody tell you like that wasn't smart? Like, what are you guys doing? Like that's financially just dumb. Did you ever get any of that, or were your parents like supportive and saying, "All right, guys, you got to go and do this"? Or
Well, fortunately, we've done a lot of, like I said, I've done a lot of things, and eBay being one of those. So I always could fall back on eBay. At one point, all I did was go to estate sales and to thrift stores and buy things and sell them on eBay, and we paid all of our bills and made a living.
yeah,
So it actually helped out a ton for me to do both of those things because I was hitting estate sales on Fridays and Saturdays, talking with people. I would either get a listing appointment out of it because I said, well, why are you selling all the stuff? Oh, we're about to list the property. Oh, great. Let me interview for the job.
yeah.
Leave them some information. And we did get some leads that way. The other thing, too, if they had already listed it, well, at that time, the market was, beginning to be so hot again that I knew off market properties.
Yeah.
So if I had someone looking to buy, I could say, hey, listen, I know one coming up in the neighborhood you wanted to be in. So it was a way for me to preview properties and find a $3 item that I could sell on eBay
you guys
for $100.
know this. You guys know this, but did you ever have anybody who didn't know you did all this and they were like, what are you thinking? Like, what are you doing?
If they did, I don't know about it.
Yeah.
I really don't.
So in other words, there was nothing there to deter you that got in your head. You were like, hey, we're doing this. Let's go all in.
Yeah, because the thing is, and I think that other people around us maybe knew this about us too, is that, Bianca, she could always go be a barber. Mm-hmm. She also is a fitness instructor.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
She
she used to do Zumba classes and things and stuff, right?
Yeah. So we always had something where, we could get a job. I was interviewing a agent the other day for Remax, and we started to talk, and I realized that, I kind of know how to interview people, but I just get to know them and see what their needs are and see if we can meet those needs. That's about it for me, because the thing is, I never had to interview for jobs. I always did sales. I think I interviewed for maybe 2 or 3 jobs in my whole life, and I told you how many jobs I had.
Right.
But it was just because of who I knew and the fact that they knew that I was a salesperson.
Right.
They knew Bianca was a good barber. They knew she could teach bar classes, which, the one that she did, or other fitness type instructional classes.
Right.
So we could always, at the drop of a hat, have something that brought in income.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So we didn't really have fear. Bianca had already seen me go through, working places and quitting, and then the next day getting another job.
Right.
Okay. It was very, she would freak out, and I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I made a phone call. I'm going to start there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you take a risk. You leave the car business. Mm-hmm. She's got a listing. You guys go there. Somebody walks in. You get another listing.
Correct. Yeah.
And you said you ended up selling the first house that she listed too, correct?
We did not. No.
You did
so
not.
that one was overpriced. And we kind of knew it going in. The guy knew it. He was looking for a lot of money. I think he sold it 4 years later.
Mm-hmm.
After
Whoa,
that. Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah. Now this guy, he was.
So you're saying it can take a while in real estate to make a paycheck?
Well, right. Yeah. And it wasn't us who sold it. We ended up, it expired. But the thing is that it was a good education for us. And going in, people can tell you advice about overpriced listings, not to take them because, one, they're not going to sell and it's just a disservice. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that this guy, he knew it was overpriced. We knew it was overpriced. But the market was very funny back then, and a lot of people were looking for houses in the Jungle neighborhood, and that's where this was, and in Jungle Terrace, and so it's a desirable spot right near parks. So that house, and it was a cute house. And
when you say Jungle Terrace, is that like Pinellas Park, or is that?
No. That's basically it's St. Petersburg near Tyrone Mall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's Jungle Prada, there's Jungle Terrace.
Oh, okay.
They're right next to each other.
So we're down in the Tyrone
Walter
area.
Fuller Park is in that neighborhood.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had a gentleman. We do an open house. We had a gentleman walk in, Mr. Weaver, and he says, he goes, "I want to sell my place. I'm not here to buy this one." And we're like, "Okay,
Awesome.
I mean, it's a little shocking. Okay, where's your place?" And he
Yeah.
goes, "Well, it's 2 houses down." I said, "Well, let's go take a look." Fortunately, because Bianca was there, I was able to leave right then and have an instant appointment.
Yeah.
So we go there. I look around the house. It's pretty much empty. Cute little house. And we had already done the comps, the comparisons, that we call in the neighborhood of what things were worth. And it was about the same size house.
Okay.
And so when we started to talk, I said, "Well, what do you want to sell it for?" And at this time, we're talking 5 years ago, he says, "I want to sell it for $80,000. And I said, "Well, if we sell for $80,000.
$80,000. What was it, like a shed?
It was actually, it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath with original wood floors. It was on a corner lot. And just to give you a little tidbit of information, behind him, there were 3 lots that didn't get developed until last year. And those houses all sold for over $400,000.
Oh, my God.
So 80.
Well, yeah, and St. Pete is just, even on the south side, shit is expensive. It's crazy.
Since 2012, the market has risen 110% for values.
Oh,
Since 2012.
Jesus.
Point in case, my buddy bought a house for $80,000 in 2013. We just got it under contract for $179,000.
God damn. God damn.
But income for people has only risen 9%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see what happens.
So you're in this guy's house.
We're in this guy's house, and so he tells me, "I want to list my house, $80,000." I said, "Sir, it's going to be sold by tomorrow. You'll have multiple offers if we do this."
Really? Now you guys had just gotten in this.
We had, but the thing is that his house, it was worth that and possibly a little bit more, but he wanted to sell it quickly, and he was looking for cash. So at that point, I'm not going to fight the guy.
Right.
Listen, we could go for a little bit more.
And you said the market was pretty good.
It was.
You said you did the comps.
Yep.
So obviously the comps came back really well.
Yeah, and close to what he wanted. And I told him, I said, "Hey, listen, we could go for a little bit more." He goes, I'm hoping for multiple offers, and I want it sold quickly and for cash."
Yeah.
He knew what he wanted, and he knew if he priced it a little bit lower, that he would probably get exactly what he wanted.
Okay.
And so as I said, "Okay, let me get the paperwork done and I'll bring it back over." And he goes, "Well, I may wait about a month." And I said, "For what?" And he says, "Well, I just want to clean up this room right here." So he had this dining room filled with a bunch of just junk. And like I said, the rest of the house was clear. And so the dining room led into the garage.
So it was just one room.
One room, that was it, that needed to be cleaned up. And there was quite a bit of stuff there. It looked like he had cleaned out everything else, and this was the last of everything.
But he said, wait a month?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if he was trying to. So at that point, I'm just like, okay, maybe he just wanted to see what it was worth, and he's kind of kindly telling me he's not going to do it.
Right.
So what I did is I just started grabbing the stuff. I opened up the garage door, and I started taking the stuff into the garage and leaning it nicely against the side of the garage. And he says, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, if you tell me you were going to list it and all you need is this room cleaned up, I'm going to clean up this room.
And we're going to fucking list it.
Then we're going to list it." I mean, dude, I'm hungry, baby. Let's go. like this. So I clean it up, and we go forward. Of course, I call my mom. "Hey, Mom, I need you to do the listing paperwork." She comes over, goes through the spiel, which was funny because I didn't hear her go through the spiel with the one that Bianca had. And then with this guy, I sat and really listened, and I thought, I'll never be able to do this. It scared me. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I take pictures. We get it up on the MLS that day. And the next day, I think it was 3 offers.
No shit.
3 offers.
Wow.
Yeah. And he took the one for cash and closed quickly.
So you guys so you never sold the original listing.
Correct.
But a guy walks in for the original listing.
Yep.
Was that like the first day you had an open house?
Yeah.
This guy walks in. You end up selling his house,
right.
2 days later?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Which really was an eye-opener for us, because it wasn't until later on that in training people said, "Hey, listen, when you're at a house, you're doing an open house, you're just not collecting buyers for that house and for possibly yourself. There's people coming in probably interviewing you.
Oh, really?
to be a listing agent. Absolutely.
No
You
shit.
get a lot of neighbors in there. So if they're looking to list their house, they're going to look at that presentation and see what you did
Yeah.
and say, okay, you know what? I'd like these people to represent my house.
Interesting.
So you could get just as many sellers as you could buyers off of holding an open house.
So how long have you been doing this for now?
So 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. So late 2013 and really into 14 is when we really got going. So 4 to 5 years, I tell people.
Yeah. Now, and if I'm not mistaken, the first year you guys did this, like that was really lucky, right? To have somebody walk into that listing or, to that open house and list it. But if I'm not mistaken, you and the wife for like the first year were like pounding doors, like literally walking out and
yeah. So same neighborhood.
Yeah.
Same neighborhood. We would not only would we walk the neighborhood and give flyers and invite people to the open house, because a lot of times your neighbors they're going to come anyway.
Yeah.
They like to see, nosy neighbors, we call them, and everybody does it. It's not a big deal. We used to actually do half an hour beforehand. Like we would do 11:30 to 12 neighbors, and then 12 to 2 was the regular open house.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, we gave them their own spot.
Yeah, yeah.
But what we would do is that we would then walk the neighborhood and either give out flyers or what we call pop buys. And so we did that in that neighborhood as well. Since it's close to where we live, that was only natural. And then we had a listing there. So I think we had, I want to say they were hand sanitizer. We bought little hand sanitizers and we had little bags and we had handwritten notes just saying, hey, we're Derrick and Bianca Silvers. We do real estate in the area. And we probably put in there, we clean up the competition or something, or if we had a spatula, we'd flip for your business. Or
you had something corny.
Oh, my goodness gracious. And my dad was the king of it, so I learned from him.
I was going to say, you had a Derrick Silvers special.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so just totally ridiculous. But it happened to just fall in these one people. I think Bianca went on her own, actually knocked on the door, and the people either met her right then or called her, and she went to speak with them.
Yeah.
And they happened to be investors, and they had been thinking about hiring an agent. They were doing it on their own, and they thought, you know what, let's get a realtor involved. We think, well, if you look at the statistics, and I'll put a little, plug for myself, Team Silvers, but statistically, for sale by owners get less when they sell their house than when they list it with an agent. And here
By how much?
I think the statistic I want to say is over 10%. It's enough,
which is pretty significant, because if you're selling a house for what, say even just 150 grand,
right?
Geez,
well,
10%.
Think about this: that if you list it, and I'm not supposed to say customarily or anything like that when it comes to commissions, but let's just say it's 6%, because in Pinellas County, the listing, in Florida, the seller pays the commissions. And so you could take that 6%, where you've got 3% for a listing agent, 3% for a buyer's agent, that someone who brings a buyer. So that's 6%, and you have that realtor handling the whole job,
right? And
then you make more money statistically. Nationally, the average is that you make more money when you list it with an agent.
So if you think about it, it's actually very smart, because time is money. Time is the most valuable thing you can have in life, right? So statistically, let's say you don't fall within the statistics. Let's say it's only 8%.
Right.
Well, if you're paying 6% commissions, you're still making a little more. But let's say you only make 4% more. Let's talk about the 2% you're paying for your time.
That's right.
In the grand scheme of things, unless you don't do shit, for a living or have nothing else better to do than to sell your house.
Yep. And
I think that seems like a low amount of money to pay to have somebody handle all the work, and somebody who's a professional, and somebody who knows all the pitfalls, and somebody who's going to handle all the paperwork, and to make sure you're legally compliant, and to make sure you find people to. It's crazy.
It is. Let's say that it was 6%. Let's say that it's exactly what possibly a brokerage would charge you to sell their house.
So you're going to make the same amount of money and not work.
Exactly.
Not do any, wow.
The other thing too, how about this? So for sale by owners, I used to I'd knock on their door, they'd answer the door, and I'd give them my card, tell them who I was, and I'd say, I'd like to take a look at your property. Now, a lot of realtors will say, oh, I may have a buyer for your property. Can I come in? You know, you hear it all the time. In fact, people are trained to say it, trained to start with a lie, which I used to send out flyers that said, I don't have a buyer for your house, but I'd love to see it, and let's talk about listing it.
Right.
Let's be honest here. I knocked on the person's door. I talked to him a little bit, and I said, I don't have a buyer for your house, but I'd like to check it out. I said, let's talk about it, and let me maybe contribute to you selling it on your own.
Right.
Get in the house and start talking to Mr. Seller. I said, how many people have been through? Oh, man, I've had like 20 people through in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Good. I said, how many of them showed you a pre-approval or proof of funds that they could buy your house?
Not many.
0.
Oh, wow.
0.
Well, I mean, and did they even think to ask for that?
No. Who did you let in your house?
Right.
Who did you let roam through your house?
It could have not even been somebody looking to buy a house. And like you said, sometimes it's just nosy neighbors.
That's it. That's
Wow.
it. So this guy had and he ended up listing with me. You know, one of the few that got it and said, wow, I never even thought about that. And he said, well, this guy said he's going to go to the bank and get a pre-approval letter. I said, okay. I said, I'll be the blue guy in the corner. If he comes, let me know. But it's probably not going to happen. And it didn't. He called me the next day and we listed the property.
Yeah.
And he ended up getting more because he had undervalued his house.
Now, let me ask you this, because so you got your you got your was it your realtor's license?
Yeah, agent license.
Your agent license.
Real estate agent license.
And recently, last year, was it? You just got your broker's license. Correct?
Yeah.
So you could actually, with a few more steps, like turn into a full-fledged broker.
Yeah. Well, the way that it works is that I could either be, I worked with Remax Metro, and so I could either be a broker for them or one of their brokers. They have 5 on staff. Or I could open up my own company, my own brokerage company, and be the broker of record.
Which would be like Keller Williams, Remax. Those
doesn't have to be. No,
those
it
are
could
brokers,
be,
right?
It could be Derrick Silvers.
But what I'm saying, those
company.
are like brokerage companies.
Those are brokerage
So somebody
companies,
basically
correct.
became a broker and then started those big.
That's
which
correct.
are now big companies.
Yeah, which they kind of outsource it. So Linda Brown would be the broker owner or broker of record for Remax Metro.
Okay.
Keller Williams, there's one guy who's the broker of record for 10 of them. So you can do it kind of however you want.
Is Keller or Williams either one of those part of his name?
Gary Keller is the owner. So he's not going to be the broker of record for those particular places.
Okay.
And then I don't know where they get the Williams from. I can't remember.
Maybe that's the other guy who's the actual broker.
Yeah, could be. But they're at that point they're just owners of a company, and then so I guess it is a brokerage. But then they're national.
Yeah.
So they open up basically offshoots that are run by individual brokerages.
Okay.
Or brokers, I should say, yeah.
All right. So you've been doing this for 5 years and have, I would imagine because most businesses, small businesses, they say they fail within the first 3 years. So obviously you've come out of that and your sales must have been getting better each year. Did you have to eat shit for the first year? Basically, were you guys not making any money and
Nothing.
Really?
I want to say our tax return was $32,000. And
combined?
Yes.
You and the wife?
Yes. And then we had a lot of write-offs. So and we were trying to buy a place. So we had to have help from my parents.
Yeah.
Because and we had to not write off as much, because we couldn't claim such a little amount of money.
Right.
So it was tough, and we had help from her dad, then we had help from my parents.
So real estate, if you're really going to go into it, it's not easy.
No, you
can't just read Real Estate for Dummies, you're saying, and then go out and just start selling houses.
And I tell people, I said, unless you have 6 months of reserves to honestly throw away, you probably need to do something different. Or if you can do that, where you do the juggling act and work, at another job that can kind of pay your bills, and then do real estate when you can until you start getting some closings, and then build up that build up some money in your account, then some reserve funds. Then you can do that. So
what would you say is probably, like, guesstimate your first year of revenues? As far as selling. Is it that's how they measure it in the real estate?
So you're
world?
talking about the volume of what we sold, like
Right.
like if a house was worth 80,000 and the next house we sold was worth 100, then it would be 180.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we did 2.1 million that year.
Your first year?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Which actually is good. If you can do over 2 million your first year, that's good. But remember, it's Bianca and I together.
Right.
Which was okay. We always have kept a low overhead, so it was a little bit easier for us to do this.
So I think this is interesting. So you had 2.1 million, which probably sounds like a lot to a lot of people, but then you think about what you just said you had for tax returns. So it's not like you guys are making 20 grand per house that you sell.
That's it. Think about if you're going to get, let's just take 3% as something, to make the math easy. Mm-hmm. So that would be $60,000 off of 2 million in sales. Mm-hmm. And now you've got all your expenses, so it gets dwindled away very quickly, and right. You don't always make 3%. Right. You don't. There's situations. Those are always negotiable points at the start or at the finish, and
because everything's a cost at that point. If you drive somewhere, it's gas.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to buy anything to promote it, balloons,
you got to promote
signs,
yourself,
anything.
right? Yeah. So
if you want to do Facebook marketing and say you're not with a company that pays for that, like you
right.
have to do that. I mean, you and I have done that, and you've had to pay, I know, out of your pocket.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
You were with Keller Williams at one point. And I know it wasn't Keller Williams cutting me a check, and
right.
You were with Remax, and I know it wasn't Remax doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's all those expenses. Now let's fast forward to year 5.
Uh-huh.
Have you guys had more than 2.1 million volume?
We've done consistently now over 20 million a year.
Really?
Yes.
So you know a thing or two now.
We know a couple of things.
So let me ask you this: what would you say, Derrick, for the first time person? Mm-hmm. What would you say is the biggest pitfall or the biggest thing to watch if you're thinking of going into real estate?
Yep.
To really pay attention to or to make sure, like there's a lot of things to do, but what's the one thing that you really have to focus on and make sure you don't gloss over if you're going into real estate for your
right.
first year?
And this is probably not the answer that most people hear, but contracts.
Contracts.
I mean, I sat with an agent yesterday, been doing it 3 years. It was an eye opener for her and for me. Not much as for me because, I was fortunate when I got into that first year that we had, I was telling you that we had left some, pop buys on people's door. People called us. We got a client out of them, and they happened to be investors. And I was writing offer after offer after offer. Sometimes I'd write 3 offers in a day. Mm-hmm. And also then when they would get a place, that we would list that place. So I was doing listing, contracts,
right,
listing agreements. And so I had a ton of practice with that. And I started to read and reread these contracts or have my father correct me a lot of times on some of these contracts because they would take a look at them. But the thing with real estate, if you don't know contracts, to me, you don't know anything.
Especially because there's a lot of laws.
Yes,
it's a lot of. I mean,
it's a 12-page contract.
I mean,
just the contract.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
and so there's national laws,
mm-hmm.
but then there's laws for state to state, correct?
Correct, and it is mostly state to state.
Are there any county laws that sometimes fall into that, or is it just state law kind of?
There are actually county laws, and customarily, one of them being that in Pinellas County, the seller is the one who customarily picks what title company you use to close. Okay. If you go down to Sarasota, Bradenton, the buyer chooses what title company to close at.
Really?
And they pick up a little bit extra of a fee. So the buyer in Pinellas County can choose the title company, but they're going to end up picking up a little bit extra fees, and the seller's going to actually have a little bit less fees when they for selling for their closing costs.
Wow, so that's the difference between two counties who are pretty damn close to each other.
Correct. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And so when I was sitting with this agent, I asked her, I said, well, what contract are you using the most? And she said, well, I use the as-is contract. And I said, well, for a seller, are you asking for that as-is contract? She said, well, yeah, I usually just use it because it's the easiest, or it might have been the only one that she knows.
Right.
And the thing is that sometimes it can be a disservice. In the as-is contract, it said buyer may cancel at the buyer's sole discretion. That's within the inspection period.
Wow.
At buyer's sole discretion. You have nothing that ties them to that property.
Right.
They could take your property off the market for 15 days or whatever the inspection period is, and never do an inspection, never set foot back in that property, not do anything, and on the 15th day send you a cancellation, you can't fight it, you can't do a thing.
Now, let me ask you this. So that's for people who want to get into the real estate business.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, or what do you think is the most effective, or what's the biggest thing you see that sellers overlook, or what's the biggest thing they don't consider when they go to sell their houses?
Yeah, I think, and I think this is always going to be this way. It's the pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody says, well, let's go a little higher, and then we can always negotiate down.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't work that way most of the time. And so trying to get someone, point in case, my buddy, I fought him on it the other day, and I said, listen, I know you want to go higher, but I promise you if we put it at here, because he's like, well, I will take this. I said, let's put it there, and you'll get it. And sure enough, we put it where I told him, and he got all the money. But what happens is, let's say that it's a $200,000 property, and they want to start it at $220,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you started at $220,000. Now the thing is that the people that are coming to see your house are people that are looking in the $220,000 price range. So they're going to go into two other houses before yours possibly, and they're going to see some nice houses for $220,000, and then walk into yours, and what are they going to think?
It's out of our price range, or
it's not worth $220,000. They saw some real $220,000 houses.
Right. Okay.
And then they went into this other $220,000 house and they say, ooh, I don't know. This isn't
so
worth
the houses that were priced correctly, where they may only get maybe they'll only go down to $215,000. But if you have a $210,000 house at $220,000,
Yep.
people are immediately going to say, no, this
maybe,
is out.
Yeah, maybe not that close, but the $200,000 to the $220,000, yeah. Because the thing is, and so now you've got people coming in your house that aren't your buyers.
Oh, right.
And then you have the people that are in the $200,000 range that aren't coming in your house because it's $220,000.
I guess I never even thought about that. That makes complete sense.
You have no one that's going to buy that should be in your price range in your home.
Right.
Nobody.
Right. Wow. I mean,
that's why you price it that way. And I can show you statistics where if you reduce quickly, which most people say that they will, and then you get to that point a week later and you say, hey, we need to reduce, and they say, well, let's just do another week. Well, I can show you charts where it goes down, 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 and then after a certain point, it just goes boom. And you're chasing the market down, is what I call it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to chase the buyers down, and you're going to always get less than what you could have got if you would have priced it right in the first place.
Wow.
But it's very hard for a realtor to convey that, and it's very hard going out of the listing agent to say, hey, you know what? I know better. I'm going to shake your hand. I'm going to move on. I know somebody will list it for that over, a little bit more, and I hope you get it. But it's very hard to walk away from that. And
it's hard for people to walk away from money, right? Like you said earlier, it's a funny thing about money.
That's it. So you think, okay, well, maybe we've got a shot here. But if you really are doing your homework and you've got that gut instinct that, you know what, it's not going to sell for that, you really should say, stick to your guns. And it's hard to do that. And that's what it's hard for sellers to hear too. It's like, well, don't you want to get me the most in my pocket? Well, yes, but that's $20,000 less than what we're talking about, and you could sell it quickly.
Right. Yeah. So in other words, like a good analogy is, it's like, listen, you can't take this Toyota Camry, put it on a Lexus parking lot, and sell it for the same price as, say, a Lexus, because they're going to look at the Lexus for, say, let's say their budget's $45,000.
Yeah.
They're going to look at your Toyota for $45,000, and they're going to say, no, I'm going to buy the Lexus for $45,000. That's much more worth $45,000. That's probably like a $30,000 car at most.
There it is. Yeah, that's exactly the analogy.
So all right. So let me ask you this. So we talked about a person going into real estate. We talked about somebody selling their house.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about a little bit about people who are looking to buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is because Zillow's out there, and I know you've addressed it many times in our conversations in the past, right? Just like pricing, you can go on the Zillow and price your house, but there is there's nothing beats somebody sitting down and actually looking at it, even if it comes out the same as Zillow and saying, you know what, it's actually pretty close.
Right.
I would say you can go $2,000 more, not that big a difference. Yeah. But I think, there's nothing that beats somebody sitting down. That's what we pay for, each other's time.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So as a buyer, what do you have any advice, or what would you say is the biggest advantage to using a realtor to shop for a house as opposed to just going on and circling that thing on your iPad or on the computer and just going in and stopping in all these houses? What's the biggest advantage to using a realtor, somebody who's licensed, to help you buy a house as opposed to you just going out and almost like car shopping for a house?
Sure. So one of the biggest things is that people don't interview buyer's agents and they don't find out what a buyer's agent can do for them. And a lot of people don't understand that there's some sellers or listing agents that don't like Zillow. They don't like realtor.com. They don't like third-party websites because they feel that they're stealing their leads.
Okay.
So when I list a property, there's a checklist. And if I check the box, I can make that property not show up on Zillow.
Okay, so you're saying not all properties may show up on Zillow.
Not all properties.
And you know, I
may
can actually
shop.
attest to that.
Yeah.
Because I remember sometimes when we were looking for a house, my wife and I would drive by. She would immediately pull out Zillow and be like, "Oh, let's just look at that really quick," and it wasn't there.
Yep.
Then once you gave us access to what is it? It's
The MLS.
What is it? MLS?
Yeah.
What's that stand
Multiple
for?
listing service.
Once we had access to that,
Yep.
it was like almost everything was on there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Zillow has done a good job on their values. They've gotten a lot better.
Is that like their comps?
Yeah, exactly. There's estimate, is it what they call it. But what's funny.
Zestimate, is that copyrighted? Zestimate.
I think it is.
Sounds like it's soap or something. Zestimate.
Did you use your Zestimate this morning?
I actually just bought Zest recently, you son of a bitch. I've never used it in my life. We bought that shit. My wife's like, coconut and shea butter? Get that.
Ooh, sounds divine. Sounds
zestiful.
That's exactly it. So this is what's funny. Whenever I'm listing a property, I look at what the Zestimate is. And then I list the property. And you want to see the Zestimate change real quick? It'll go to very close to what you just listed the property for. So a lot of people look and they're like, "Oh, wow, that Zestimate's kind of on point." Well, look at it what it was a lot of times beforehand.
Right.
Also, I can put things into the description that'll make the Zestimate jump.
So you're saying if I'm
Keywords.
if I'm a buyer,
Yep.
the advantage to me, say using a realtor or something, is the access to this MLS.
Yeah. So you're really going to get the properties that are on the market. Okay. And then the other thing too is that the customarily here the listing or the seller pays the commission. Up north, I think in New York, actually, like the buyer pays his agent and the seller pays his agent or his or her agent, excuse me.
Yeah, that was another thing I don't think a lot of people are aware of here in Florida. Like, you're not paying anything more to use an agent.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
Yes. And one of the biggest mistakes people
you have nothing to lose as a buyer.
Exactly. So get yourself a good buyer's agent. The other thing, too, is that, if you're going to go out and contact a listing agent directly, how do you know who that person is? How do you know it's even a good realtor?
Right.
How do you know who you're really working with? And the other thing, we go back to agency relationship, which we brought up, single agent, transaction broker, no brokerage relationship. There's a possibility that listing agent is a single agent for that basically representing just them. So the thing is that these people, one, when you call me or text me, how quick do I get back?
Fairly quick. I mean, usually I expect it within 24 hours. And when I remember you guys were, generally within like 4 to 6 hours, as long as it was reasonable.
Right. So
sometimes it was immediate.
Yeah. So the thing is that you want to get back with people quickly. So if you have a good buyer's agent, they're going to be on top of it. If you want that property, hey, listen, let me get you in there. I'm going to hound the listing agent. We're going to get you in there first. We're going to, find out what the motivations are. If you call that listing agent directly, maybe you don't get a hold of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you've got a good buyer's agent, or that buyer's agent may see and say, "Oh, you know what? Sorry, this one has this. You told me you didn't want that." "Oh, okay. Thank you very much." We've eliminated properties up front that people got excited about. And so, you've really got someone on your side. And people always have this misconception that if they go straight to the listing agent, they're going to save the commission.
Yeah.
The thing is that if I list your property, you and we know how much you're going to pay me, right?
Right.
That buyer, they have no clue if I'm going to reduce your commission,
right,
or my commission.
Right.
They have no clue that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's not a possible, it's not, always that they're going to save that money.
And now that I asked you that question, I'll tell you some things that for us, we didn't realize at first. Mm-hmm. So first off, we didn't know because some of it's still very fresh in my mind because I remember we didn't realize, like I said, that the seller paid. So we weren't sure how much it was going to cost or anything until we had that initial sit down with you and Bianca. But in my head, I was thinking, and this I pull from the car business. My favorite thing is when you get buyers in there, right, or prospects, and they would always be like the professionals. And what's the one thing after you and I had been there for years, we would say to each other, you would say to other salespeople, they would say to you, like, I have sold more cars this month than you've bought in your entire lifetime. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So going in to buy a house, I knew that and I didn't know how far you and Bianca had been at that point, I just know you did. Mm-hmm. I knew you guys had, helped people buy and sell more houses than we'll ever buy in our lifetime. Mm. So that was one of the thing, know. So we knew that, like I said, from selling cars, I remember I brought that. And then the other thing that really showed it was a couple of the places we went to, you guys would already know the listing agent. Mm-hmm. Like you had their cell phone number.
Yep.
You didn't even look it up. You would be, oh, we know this person.
Yep.
And they were more real with you. So instead of negotiating, cowering with you, they would be like, look, this person's just not going to drop.
Yep.
Like the price is the price.
Yep.
They may do too. And I remember that. And then the other thing that really stood out was, in fact, the house that we live in now. I remember, we came there. It was really late at night. It was like 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Right.
Because I had I had fucking Toastmasters or something, right?
Yeah.
So I had to leave the meeting at a little bit early, but it was still 8:30, I think, when we got here. Yeah. And then when we got here, it was just a little you just turned on the lights and you didn't try to sell us with shit. But we're walking through the house. Yes, you have to have a house appraised. And yes, they got to tell you things to look out for. But you were like, oh, that's a bunkie board. Beadboard, right? And you're like, oh, that's not something that's common. Or
you love to say bunkie board.
I can't get it out of my head.
There's something in the world.
But pocket doors and shit like that. I had no idea about that stuff. Sure. And you're like, oh, those are pretty cool. Oh, that's pretty cool. That adds value.
Yep.
You're like, oh, that could be an issue. We might want to ask. And that's not something we look for.
Yeah.
Right? We look for, and this isn't anything against my wife, but she just looks for does it look pretty?
Right.
Right? Is it laid out nice? Mm-hmm. That's what she was looking for. For me, I'm like, do the sinks work? Let me turn on the garbage disposal. Does it go or does it go?
How's that?
Do the toilets flush? And that's what we're looking for. You know, and then, but like I said, you being experienced with this, you're like, oh, this and that. You have to be aware of this shit.
Sure.
So I just thought that was very interesting and not something I think a lot of people take into consideration.
Yeah, and that was honestly watching my mom through the years, pointing out the different, she always said, look up and look down. You can look at the granite countertops, but you better look up too and see what the ceiling's looking like, what the floor looks like.
Right.
There's a lot that goes into it. You know, and so you're very, you're right with that, and there's different things that are of huge benefit that people just don't know about.
Yeah, and instead of 2 sets of eyes, even sometimes we even had 4 sets of eyes because it would be me, her, you, me, her, Bianca, and sometimes me, her, you, and Bianca.
Correct.
And it was you. You guys got paid when the house sold, or when we bought something, but at the same time, you weren't just there buy this one. No, buy this one.
Right.
You guys would kind of step back because, even having experience, to look out for certain things because that's not going to pass inspection. Mm-hmm. They're going to, just so they're going to need to fix this.
Yep.
Because it's not like you were trying to push us to buy it.
Yeah.
You were actually looking at shit and pointing out stuff. And like I said, sometimes things we wouldn't even think to look at.
Sure. Yeah,
and so I think that was a real advantage I'd never thought about.
It is. And it just comes through experience, comes through walking through houses, with investors, inspectors, painters, and being at all those appointments for people because it's very important to know. And you're right, you don't have to sell a house. If I'm trying to sell you on the house, it might not be the house for you.
Thinking back, talking with you, there was definitely some huge advantages to using you, but I gotta say, using your team it was really my own perspective. I didn't even know about all that.
Right.
So I guess the real trick for agents is there's so much that, like anything, I'd say that there's a lot of good agents out there, but there's also a lot of, like car salespeople. There's just a lot of the churn and burn.
Yeah. Well, there's some that don't care. You're going to find that in every business. And then there's some that just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And that's where you really need to get with a group who trains. The Pinellas Realtor Organization has classes all the time.
Yeah.
Do people still want to keep going to classes? Well, not really sometimes. But if you're going to be in this business, you probably should, because there's a lot of updates. There's a lot of things that change. The contract changed early on, and I almost had to buy somebody curtains for their house because now they were included in the contract. And,
right.
And, it was something that I missed.
Derrick, how do you differentiate yourself then? Because there's a lot of, I think you had said that at one point, you had told me before, there's 9,000
I think
licensed
agents
people. I mean, we're not saying that they're all active,
right?
But how do you differentiate yourself, or what challenges do you face when you're in the sea of that many people?
Yeah.
Like how have you guys stood out?
It's top of mind, staying in contact with these people, and it's not that you have to have a close relationship with all of these people, but they need to know that who you are and that you're still doing business. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing. And that's what somebody asked me, well, how do you keep growing, and how do people know that you're doing so much business? I said, I make them look like I'm the only agent in town. I make myself look famous. That's what I did for a long time. I just put myself everywhere, made sure that they knew how many closings I had. And it's tough for me because I'm not that braggadocious type of guy, but you also want people to know that you're doing business. So that's kind of, you kind of tactfully have to let people know, hey, listen, we got something going on here. But it really is staying in contact with people. I think it was, the statistic is 80% of the people said that they liked their realtor, and they would refer their realtor, and they would use them again. But I think it was 80% of the people also didn't remember what the name of the person was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you have to fact check me on that, but the statistic is crazy.
But it's something similar to that.
Yeah, it is something similar to that, and it's just unfortunate that that's what it is. And there's so many ways to connect these days. You can send a mailer, you can send, even a handwritten note. I mean, people love handwritten notes. You want to get a letter opened up, handwrite it.
It's crazy. It's crazy you're saying that, because a lot of times people are like, oh, what I should have said is when you had said, oh, there's so many different ways to contact people, and this is where somebody should have said, oh, yeah, especially with the internet. Mm-hmm. But what I'm finding with the internet is anybody can do the internet, and sometimes it's those handwritten letters that make all the difference, because
it is.
What's that take that the internet doesn't take? Time.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Handwriting notes. We personally,
saw
we'd usually deliver a Christmas present or
that
holiday
fucking popcorn
gift.
Was on point. I went down to Target and bought a shit ton more. You can ask Lindsay. I came back and I stocked up on that shit.
So, we love that. We love to stop at people's houses and see how they're doing. And there's so much negative in sales that, you need that positive. You need to be with those people and see that they're enjoying their home.
Yeah.
And what you did made a difference. Money aside and all that. Of course, we need money. Everybody knows that, to live. But when you see the satisfaction of a person from selling their home or selling them a home, or having an investment that they made money on, it's just there is a joy to that. And I've been in a lot of businesses, as we said. There's not any other business that I've ever been in that people wanted to talk about no matter what. Yeah. Everybody knows something about a house. They either want to buy a house, they sold a house, their friends looking for a house. They like to get into investing,
right?
Cars. I mean, nobody wants to talk about cars. I mean, you and I will talk about cars,
because we're in the car business.
We're not going to talk about Honda Accords, though. Or your Cadillac. Great, it goes fast. Good for you.
So let me ask you this. I want we got to get ready to wrap this up. But I got a question for you, and it's something I'm curious about. But I think a lot of other people would be curious too. That first year when you said you weren't making a lot of money, I mean, it's just like somebody starting a business, and it's tough, right? Yeah. Like you said, you said you guys filed like $32,000, like the money wasn't there. It got tough. Were there times where you guys said maybe this isn't for us, and you were thinking of quitting?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and what was that like? I mean, well, how did that affect you guys, and how did you come through that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't even know. I'm trying to kind of think of the specifics.
Because there was two of you. It was you and the wife. It wasn't just.
Yeah. I think that we did. We were very hopeful people. We're very positive people, and I just feel like we just kept the hope. We thought, there's going to be a point that we're going to get to that this is going to become a little bit easier. And that was it, man. We just had to hold on to hope. We had to make do with what we had. We had to eat ramen noodles when we had to. I had to go out and go to estate sales when I needed to. But you really have to just grind. I mean, I've never grinded like that in my life. Just buckle down and grind. And it is easier when you have two people, because when I was going, oh man, this I just can't do it today.
Yeah.
Then Bianca would go, you know what? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to knock on some doors. I'm going to go today.
Right.
And then the next week when she was going, I just can't do this anymore, I'd say, you know what? Let me call a couple old friends of mine. Let me just reconnect with them. And that's where things started to happen. It's just, it's going above and beyond even when you're beat down, and just keeping that positive attitude. Because I feel we're both like this. I mean, we're both very positive people, and things have worked out for us. And so I always, and this is going to be tough for the person that maybe is not as optimistic, but I always look back on my life in order to look forward. And I say, wow, look at what I've come through. Look at the progression, that I'm still here, God or whoever you want to believe in hasn't dropped me on my butt and just kicked me to the curb. Yes, I've had hard times, but you know what? When I look at it, it's all worked out pretty well. And that's what really helped me. That's what really helped her. Let's look back on our life. You're not trying to get out of the barber business, and I'm not trying to sell another motorcycle so that we can actually get groceries today.
Right.
Right. We made it.
That's interesting. There's I think I've told you about. I read this book, David Goggins Can't Hurt Me, and he kind of has a reference to something very similar to what you just said. He calls it his cookie jar.
Okay.
And when shit gets really tough, he in his cookie jar he puts all his successes and his failures. And so when something gets really tough, like if he doesn't think he can go on, he's an ultra marathon runner, 100 miles. He'll be at mile 70. And he's like, I can't go anymore. And he pulls out the cookie, and he's like, motherfucker, you became a Navy SEAL.
That's it.
You've done Army Ranger, and you've run 100 miles before. Of course you can fucking do that.
Right.
So, positivity,
Same thing.
Looking in the past and pulling out something to use you. And
yeah. And there's been times where, and you can call it miracles, you can call it whatever you want, but even when we were doing the right thing and we just weren't going to make it, that money would show up.
Yeah. Or like a listing, somebody would walk in from down the street.
Exactly. And I'm not, I mean, just things would just start to happen, you know, and you're like, wow, okay.
Yeah, but you got to be there, right?
There is somebody looking out for us.
You got to stick it through.
You got to show up. You still got to show up. You got to dress up, show up, act like success. I mean,
even on the shittiest day.
Let me tell you something. There was a guy that we met that we thought there's no way that he was going to make it in the business. And of course, you're always, sitting there all like, they'll never make it. And while you're, eating ramen
all this
noodles.
fucking green pea.
Right. Exactly. And so, and we had started at the same time. Well, he put on the outside of his computer, I am a realtor, and he would put his computer up and he would go into Starbucks and he would do his work. And then he would give the barista that he got to know pretty well $50 and say, buy whatever the next person that comes in, their coffee, that's on me. The next person until the $50 was up.
No shit.
And they would come in and the barista would say, it's taken care of by Brad. He's right over there.
And he'd have his laptop up. I'm a realtor.
I am a realtor. He's a successful realtor. He wasn't selling anything at that point.
Who does anything like that? You know who? Brad.
Brad does.
Brad
made it.
No shit.
By doing that.
Wow, good for him.
Yeah.
That's fucking genius kind of.
It is. It is.
Like $50, depending on what you're doing, it may not be a lot, or it may be everything.
It may be everything.
But it's hell of an investment.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So let me ask you this. You've been 5 years in.
Yep.
How much longer are you guys going to do the Team Silvers for?
Yeah, well, we'll keep it going. I'm always that person that's looking for different things. I'm going to do my mortgage broker's license. Maybe I'll start doing mortgages.
Mortgage broker's license.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, it's just a natural progression. A lot of times Bianca will get a call about a buyer and Or like the other night, I was like, well, you could have just put them on the phone with me. I could have got them pre-approved right now.
So unlike the car business where there was a natural progression, like you actually want to go through this natural progression.
Oh, yeah. Well, it also, more knowledge. I mean, to be able to speak on things. I mean, you really want to know. That's the thing is that no matter what, even though you got a mortgage broker, you got a title company, you've got inspectors, everything comes back on the realtor.
Yeah.
So you might as well know as much as you can.
Right.
Not to say that you have to have the answers to everything, because you shouldn't, and that can get you in a lot of trouble, but you should know a lot.
Right.
You should know as much as anybody else. And so, the funny thing about real estate, though, is that you can't really sell a real estate business. So you got to kind of basically build the team up to where it can run itself.
Yeah.
Because if I sold the real estate business to you and you started calling my past clients, they'd go, who are you?
Oh, shit. Yeah.
So
right.
they might know 3 other realtors. Why
Right.
would they deal with you when they just could call their
Right.
other
Because
realtor
at that point,
friend
it's just
that
a
they
name,
know?
but it's really the relationship that matters.
That's it. So it's something to think about. If you're starting a real estate business, it's not probably a sellable product for most people.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
to get out of. But it's a longevity type thing. And the good news is the longer you stay in it, hopefully, if you do things right, and this goes back to that question you asked me about, a different buyer's agent, being honest, knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know can make you last. Because when you're honest and you have integrity, especially in the biggest purchase or sale of people's lives, that's going to go a long, long way.
Yeah. Being honest and sincere are huge.
Yep.
Huge.
Yep.
Yeah. Because usually when you lie, that's, especially in the car business, I mean, it burns quick.
Oh, yeah.
And it comes out quick. That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
other thing too.
Yeah.
They may come out of that finance office and signed everything.
Yeah.
But you lied about that or being a third row or something.
Yeah.
They'll remember that shit.
Oh, absolutely.
And they
Yeah.
will tell everybody, this son of a bitch over there, he told
doubt.
me there was a third row, but there was. I mean, we got the car. We got, and how do they describe the experience? We got, right?
Yeah.
That's not a good way.
Yeah.
And
So
really,
just hope you can't sleep at night when you do stuff like that,
Oh,
because that'll,
Jesus.
I mean, really that's what, the way you should operate.
Right.
And especially in real estate, there's a code of ethics, and, people don't know about these things. People don't stay up on these things. And it can be a very bad place for people to get.
yeah. Well, shit, man. I even learned a lot of things today that I normally didn't know about real estate. And I figured, knowing you for all these years, I knew quite a bit, but damn.
Wow.
Well, I want to thank you for coming by. It's been awesome. I got to have you in again because
Thanks
there's
for
some
having
shit we got to talk about. We got to talk about because the VR,
Yep.
there's
Little VR,
God, there's so
little
much more to
pickleball.
talk about. Pickleball. Holy shit. They're the Kardashian secret, right? Pickleball.
I don't know if that's going to sound right.
Jeez, pickleball. Pickleball sounds so disgusting. Hey, let's play some pickleball.
Do you want to hear real quick how the name came about?
Yeah.
What I read?
Pickleball?
Did I tell you? Yeah.
No. What's up with pickleball?
So 2 guys go play golf, okay, and their wives are waiting for them.
2 guys in pickleball. This is going to end well.
Yeah, 2 guys playing golf.
Okay.
So their wives are waiting for them. This is 1965. This is what I've read. 1965. They get home, and the 2 wives are going, hey, we want to play something with you guys. This is going bad. Anyway, so we want to play a sport with you guys.
Yeah.
And so they go out and they put up the badminton net, and they can't find the badminton paddles, or the birdie, I think they call it, to play with.
Right.
So they're like, okay, what are we going to do? So they improvise. They go get their ping pong paddles. They put the net down, and they get a wiffle ball. And they start playing this kind of smaller tennis game, basically, with a wiffle ball and paddles.
Right.
And their dog, Pickles, kept grabbing the ball and running away from them.
Shut up. No.
And so was birthed pickleball.
So they probably kept yelling, pickle, ball.
Right.
Pit.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other thing was that they said that the wife was a rower. And so she said, when we don't have our oars, and now this can apply to a lot of different things, but she said, we don't have the oars, we're in a pickle. So since they didn't have the right stuff to play badminton, they were in a pickle.
Oh,
so
no
they
shit.
put this together, and it became pickleball. So one of those stories possibly is true. How about that?
One of those is possibly true. It'd be interesting. Somebody go check out Wikipedia and be like, this fucking guy has nothing to do with any of that. There's no dog, and it was created over in India or Antarctica. What the penguins
Depends
made
on
it?
who wrote the Wikipedia, right? Yeah, if it sounded better, then that's probably what happened.
Oh, shit. So, Derrick, let me ask you this, though. You operate here in Pinellas County?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Pinellas, we will do Hillsborough, and we'll do some of Sarasota County. I always tell people, if we're doing you a disservice, like by representing you there, like we don't know anything and we wouldn't be able to figure it out, we shouldn't be doing real estate there. So if we're doing you a disservice, we'll refer that out and get you a great realtor. But otherwise, we know a lot of Pinellas County. I've been here 39 years.
And you can help people buy and sell homes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And which, how does somebody find you?
Obviously, they can call us, 727-831-6211, 831-6211, or they can email us at soldbysilvers@gmail.com.
Soldbysilvers@gmail.com.
Yep.
And I would imagine they could also just, if they Googled Team Silvers.
You can Google Team Silvers. You can go on Zillow and put in Team Silvers to see.
You guys are on social
statistics.
media and everything?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Team Silvers LLC on Facebook, Team.Silvers on Instagram.
So basically Team Silvers.
Just Google.
Google, baby.
Yeah, just Google like everything else, right?
Well, it was awesome, man. Thank you for coming by.
Absolutely.
It's a good blast from the past. And, we hadn't talked for quite a few years when I called you up and said, hey, you still in real estate?
Yeah.
So it's crazy. And here we are. I bought a house from you, and we've stayed in touch pretty good ever since.
Yeah, which is cool. Yeah,
Wow.
so I'm glad to be here today. Thanks always for the invitation.
Yeah, man, I look forward to having you again too. So thanks for being on the podcast, the show, Stop Hamel Time. And Stop Hamel Time, it's Derrick Silvers.
That's it.
Team Silvers.
Team Silvers.
Always be closing, baby.
That's it.
All right, brother.
All right.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
See ya.
Bye.